Philip Chism killed Colleen Ritzer and did unspeakable things to her body. This case is a terrible tragedy. His actions have caused immeasurable pain. We took a long time to select you as the jurors because you promised that you'd be able to put aside the horror and decide the case based on the evidence. So what is this case about? This case is about why did this happen? Why did a 14-year-old boy, well-behaved, quiet, 1 month into high school, do these terrible things? The answer is he was severely mentally ill. He had been suffering from a psychotic disorder since the age of 10. Why did no one notice how severely ill he was? Unfortunately, a psychotic disorder in children is rarely noticed. A child and a young teen can suffer for years with the illness, and the people close to him don't notice it. The child or the young teen experiences hallucinations, voices, anxiety, depression, fear. Spending time with another family. And it was the family of his best friend, Tanner Carter. And he began spending holidays with the family, going on vacations, sleeping there several nights at a time, because there he could maintain the fiction that everything was fine. No one was asking him what was going on inside of him. He was just accepted as Tanner's quiet friend. Now, how do children manage this disease so that, and children and young adults, young teens, manage this disease so others don't notice? How do they keep these voices, these feelings at bay? Well, they use different mechanisms to cope. They use video games, they use comic books, they use other kinds of fantasy, they use sports, or they use avoiding any situation where their parents will be asking, what is going on with you? And that's what Philip did. So what happened when Philip moved to Danvers? Well, psychosis, psychotic disorder in children and young adults is a progressive disease. It gets worse. And as time goes on, it gets worse, and stress can make it much worse. And what happens is that the child or young adult gradually loses the ability to maintain their grasp on reality. And that's when something happens and parents and teachers and everyone notice. So Chism was under a lot of stress when he started at Danvers. He had lost his entire support system. He was away from his best friend. He had lost the Carter family. He had lost his soccer coach. He had lost all the support of a close-knit community in Clarksville, Tennessee. And he came to Danvers, where he knew practically no one, and had to start as a freshman in high school and deal with all the social, economic, social, emotional demands of being a young teen starting high school. Now, in the short time he was at Danvers High School, there were signs. And what you'll hear is that when parents look back, when people around a child with psychotic disorder, a young teen with psychotic disorder, when they look back after the acute time, they realize there were signs. but they're subtle signs. And it's not unexpectedly, it was the fellow students at Danvers High School who noticed the signs in Philip, that noticed the change in Philip. A few students noticed that he had gone in that short time from being very friendly to being very quiet and alone. The day before the terrible events, a member of the soccer team noticed that Philip was staring off into space and didn't respond when someone talked to him. Someone else noticed that he was emotionless and didn't celebrate when he got a goal. And on the day in question, there were several subtle but telling signs. During the school day, Philip, a good friend of Philip, one of his new friends, saw him and thought that he looked off and said, Philip, what's wrong? And Philip Chism didn't answer, he just walked away, and he had never done anything like that before. In the class with Miss Ritzer, Philip, instead of paying attention to math, was listening to music through earphones and was drawing. And you'll hear that listening to music through earphones is a common way that people with psychosis, with psychotic disorder, cope with hearing voices. And Miss Ritzer tried to redirect him to his work, but he continued to listen to the music and to draw. Afterwards, after class, in the classroom, you're going to hear from Autumn Cianci. And what Autumn observed was that Philip was not himself. She had known him somewhat, but he seemed very different that afternoon. And as Miss Ritzer was asking him questions about Tennessee and being appropriately friendly, Philip just got more and more tense. And Miss Ritzer, in talking to him, tried to talk to him, and he became tenser and tenser. At one point, she was talking, and he was looking out the window and mumbling. Now, why didn't Philip Chism seem more crazy after he killed Colleen Ritzer? These periods of time when a child or a young adult are overwhelmed by psychosis and lose touch with reality do not necessarily last a long time. They can last a few hours, or they can last a few weeks. And when it's over, the child or the young adult, young teen, returns to their baseline, how they were before, until there is another overwhelming episode. Now, Philip's actions after he killed Colleen Ritzer were not rational. You'll see video of him running in and out of the school for about an hour and a half after he killed Miss Ritzer. And while he's running around the school, he has a hood up, a hood down, a mask on, a mask off. His full face is exposed. And there are cameras everywhere, all over the school. But he keeps changing how he looks. But often his full face is exposed. After about an hour of this running around, he runs into the school with blood all over his pants, barefoot, and goes all the way up to the 3rd floor, making no effort to hide his face or his condition. And then an hour and a half later, after leaving the school area, he doesn't flee Danvers. He goes and uses Miss Ritzer's credit cards, goes to the movies. And then where is he found? Just walking on Route 1 in the dark, aimlessly north. And how does he appear to the police? Very strange, very odd. He doesn't make eye contact. Now, I'd like to direct your attention to something that I'd ask you to pay attention to. It's a factual issue that will relate to your deliberations. And I'd ask you to pay attention to the sequence of events, including the time of Ms. Ritzer's death. Now, there are two more aspects of the evidence that you're going to hear at this trial that I'd like to bring to your attention. One is, in diagnosing a child or a young teen with a psychotic disorder, one of the things that doctors look at is whether there's a family history of severe mental illness. In Philip's case, there is. His maternal grandmother and his maternal aunt have suffered from psychosis on and off for years and have had many, many hospitalizations. The second thing is that recently Philip was diagnosed with a psychotic disorder at Worcester Recovery Center. There they put him on an antipsychotic medicine, and after a few days on it, he agreed to see his mother, who he hadn't seen since his arrest. It's going to be really hard to listen to this case. It's going to be challenging and heartbreaking. But the real work of this case is to figure out the terrible landscape of a young boy's mind in the months and days and weeks before this terrible event. Thank you so much. Thank you.